Hello, I'd like to thank you and everybody else for coming today to join us with the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Tea Talk session. And what our Tea Talks are about is we're looking at going back and recording some of our seniors, our older people, some of our community members as to Hamilton Indigenous history. And I'm very honored today to have two of our I don't want to say, Cindy Sue calls us old war horses or dinosaurs. I don't know which one I prefer, but I have two beautiful ladies here. I have Marilyn Wright and I have Mandy. And we're going to talk a little bit about health, but we're also going to talk about them and their accomplishments. So to begin with, I'm going to start with Mandy. If Pat, you want to say a little bit, give us a little introduction of yourself?
Okay. Anishinaabe, Kabishawakwe, Dishnakas, Magazine Dodam, Mississauga and Daw. My name's Mandy, and my spirit name is People Brings Together Woman. And that has been my journey in life, is to work together for the better of Indigenous individuals and community by bringing people together and teaching non-Indigenous people the true history and needs of Indigenous people.
Thank you very much. And another beautiful person here, Marilyn Wright. Can you give us a little bit of intro about yourself?
My name is Marilyn Wright, and I am Delaware, part of the Six Nations membership. Through the government, they say I'm Upper Cayuga, but my mother was a Delaware. But I'm honored to be here today, to participate in these tea talks. You can't remember what you don't know. Just talking about the history and the things that we participated in and been part of, and it just brings back a flood of memories.
Yes, it does.
About the people that you spent time with, you worked with, you partnered on projects with, and some of them sadly aren't here anymore, but I feel that they're looking down and they're helping us do what we need to be done. So I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yes.
But I'd like to dispute some of what Mrs. Mandy has said. If truth be told, there's a dispute of what her bloodline is. My family says that she is
So yous are related?
the granddaughter.
It depends.
Sometimes I'm related to Janice Lewis and Melanie,
Yeah.
and sometimes I didn't know which. I already apologized to Marilyn that I was going to use my booked bloodline, not the real one.
She is the granddaughter of my great uncle Nathan Montour.
Let's get facts straight.
Yes, yes, yes. But if she feels the need to say that she belongs to the Mississaugas, then I'll grant her that.
My card says.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's so funny you say that in that way, because you're right. My mother, I was born in Six Nations. I'm currently living on Tygnanega, which is my father's reserve. Once my mother married my father, everything got transferred. Yeah. So she too is now living down in Tygnanega, but that's not originally where she's from. Yeah. So, normally we would follow our mother, right? Yeah. But with the government, they followed the father.
Well, with Anishinaabe, we follow the father's clan.
Okay.
And so some of my cousins call me a Chippahawk.
A Chippahawk?
Because I have both grandmother and grandfather, matriarch and patriarchal. So it's difficult.
Some of my relatives call ourselves Delahawks.
Delahawks?
Yeah. Part Delaware and part Mohawk.
Yeah.
So.
Delahawks. So those are some cool names, actually. Yeah. So thank you very much. And as we're doing introductions, just to let you know, I've been around in the community for a while now too, over 30 years, and I know you've probably watched me grow up too, as my time here. But I just wanted to comment too that I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. I have a partner that I've been with for 46 years. The boy next door, we've been together since we were roughly 12, so, and he's here with me. And I realized last night how much support he is for me. And I have to make this acknowledgement because, not only is he my driver, but helps me work through a lot of things, because I have to say the past couple days has been so emotional for me, right? Like I said, yesterday I cried 3 times, and I tried to explain to him because my mother's quite concerned at home. She called, and of course, how's Yvonne doing? And very worried about me. And so when I said I cried, he looked at me, and I said, they were happy tears. They were happy tears, okay? And that's why my eyes are so bulgy today, but I just had to put him into this conversation as well, because after 46 years of support, he's the one who gets me to where I need to go. And I got my daughter at home with my grandkids looking after my dog. So you have to have that stable base too, you know, so you can do the work you need to do. But I thank you both for coming and taking part. And I'm going to be asking you some questions, but mainly it's about yourselves and your accomplishments, okay? And very much, I know you guys have been involved in the health, like forever in my mind. I know I was involved very early on in a research project that was at the Tuatha Desne, the Aboriginal Health Center. I had expressed, I really don't know Pat, but I've heard your name growing up all my life, okay? And I knew you were out there, and you were, to me, one of our role models in the health system. And but it's nice to get an opportunity now to sit down and really to talk to you and to learn more about you. So I'm going to start with that. Is there, something, and again, as these tea talks, it's not about the agencies themselves, even though that's very important to us, but it's about the individuals that made a difference with that agency, right? And that path. And a lot of us have had struggles on our paths, and it hasn't been easy. And no disrespect, but considering you are much older than me, I think.
I am much. I'll even tell you, I'm 77, soon to be 78.
Oh,
So-
yes, okay. Yes.
So I've been around for a little while.
Yes, you have. You are. You are. Okay. So if you would like to share, how did you come to Hamilton? Were you born in Hamilton? Or tell us a little bit your journey here.
Okay. Well, you both talked about your family, so I should probably mention I do have a husband of about 45 years. I have 2 adopted children who are both Indigenous. One was Mohawk and one was Anishinaabe. And I, as soon as I was aware enough, through the adoption, made sure that I had their status cards and so on, so that they wouldn't be losing any of their piece. My husband is not Indigenous, and as my son, when he was young, he said, how come everybody in our family is an Indian? He said, you are, and my sister is, and Grandma, and all the people at Grandma's house. And poor Dad, he's just a scuba diver. So I've been married to this scuba diver. Anyway, and it's true. All the family, the connections are really with the Indigenous side of my family. So I was actually born in Detroit, and to a single mother at the time. And my great-grandmother heard that I was there and sort of went and kidnapped me and brought me back, and I lived with her for a few years. And then when she married and moved to Hamilton, and then I was adopted by my dad. Okay. And so I came to Hamilton just about school age, just before school age, and did all my schooling in Hamilton. I think one of the things I should probably mention, because I think it played a lot on my life, is that we seemed to be the go-to house for anybody that was looking for a spot to live in Hamilton from the reserve, whether they were going to school, whether they were going to, had a job for a while. A lot of folks were in construction at the time. I always said my uncle built the Skyway Bridge, because, so it was always a house full. And my mother was always looking after everybody, made sure they got to the dentist, to the welfare, whatever they needed. I went into nursing because at that time, the only professions really for a female would be nursing or teaching. Nursing I could go into, didn't have to pay. Lived in residence, and so my mother always told me I was going to be a nurse. I'm not sure why, but so I went into nursing. And I think because I've had so much dealings with my mother showing me that you need to look after people, that you need to do that. And then when I got into nursing and working in the hospital, I would run into relatives or people that I knew. And of course, the first thing I would always say, does my mother know you're here? Because I can't tell her. So they all knew her, right? So anyway, but I ended up being kind of a little bit of an advocate because folks weren't used to coming into the hospital. I mean, now we're talking about the late 60s and early 70s. And so there was
That
not
was a difficult
all of
time.
the information that there
Yes,
was now
yes.
about cultural sensitivity. There was not. And so there was all of that. So it drew me into, I guess, all of the roles, the path that I was expected to take and still take of being an advocate and trying to not be angry that those didn't know, but think they didn't understand.
Yes.
I think it's about education.
Yes.
I don't think people are nasty. I think they just don't know.
Yes.
And so
I
that kind
agree.
of started me on my journey around how do I teach people, how do I bring together so that there's mutual respect.
Good stuff. Holy, that's a lot that you've said there. And just to comment on that, in the 60s, it was a very different time back in the 60s and early 70s, and the treatment. I hate to say, we still get mistreated, but you know, that I do remember those days with my mom and my brother and that, so it really affected me. So Marilyn, let's go to you, your involvement. I know you've been a guest already, and you've shared a little bit about yourself, but here's an opportunity to share some more about the great job you've been doing, because I'll tell you, the community work that I remember and recognize, and the people adored you, loved you, you know, in the sense of what you provided. You brought them not only food, we all bring food, or we look after our people, but the food and giving opportunity. And the women, it was unbelievable. I watched your volunteers that time, and I'm thinking, man, they'll do anything for her. And they were right there to help you. And I just wish they were there a little bit more when you were carrying those big bags at times. I see you out the front. I'd run out there try and help where I could. But yeah, you certainly have left your mark. Do you want to share about your experiences there?
At the
Anywhere, because anywhere you've been, I've seen you. That's what you're doing. You're feeding people, helping people.
My first exposure, I think, to helping people was when I worked at Six Nations in health services as a CHR.
Okay.
And thanks to Pat and Ruby Jacobs, who was the director of health services, and I'm sure Pat's going to talk about it a little more. We got to be advocates that went into the hospitals to do friendly visits to the Native people who were in the hospital. If they had a problem, a situation, didn't understand what was happening to them, and that's what our role was. And my role was in the hospitals in Hamilton. So I would go to McMaster, the General, St. Joe's, to visit the people there. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had, except one time I went to visit a gentleman who was there from Webequie, way up in northern Ontario, and he decided that he was in love with me. And after he got better and got out of the hospital, we were going to get married.
Oh my goodness.
But I explained to him, well, I'm sorry, but in this day and age, it's illegal to have two husbands. And because I already have one that I'm not done with yet, you know. But, you know, people, if you've gone to visit them over a period of time, or even not, you know, you're a connection and a comfort that they didn't have when they went to the hospital, because during that time, Hamilton General was the heart facility for northwestern Ontario. This is before the hospital in Sudbury was built, and they would have to come down by plane or whatever, and they could only bring one relative with them that was paid for by health, First Nations health benefits and that. So Some of them were very scared because if you're coming down to have a heart surgery, you have no idea what's going to happen. You haven't been exposed to stuff like that before. You weren't familiar with the hospital, with the nurses,
And it's a different environment in a hospital.
it is a very different environment. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And, you know, people, you were a little touch of home for them. You know, you were familiar because you were Native, even though you never knew them from anyone else.
But they related to you right away.
Still felt that little comfort. And at the time, we would give them little gift bags that had soap and shampoo and the stuff that they needed while they were here. And I built some friendships over the years with some of the people from the north. One time there was a family that was visiting down here. They had drove down. Their mother had come down here for heart surgery. They had drove down and there was like 10 of them.
Okay.
And they were staying in a hotel room at the Royal Connaught at the time, and I made arrangements for our elder, Walter Cook, would go and he'd visit them and they'd smudge. But this was during the summer, and my family always had a family reunion the last Sunday in June of every year. So they were here, they weren't doing nothing, they didn't know. So I took them with me to my family picnic.
Oh, that's good.
So
they must have loved it, though.
They had a great time. You know, they fit right in. You know, all my Native relatives and other people that were there. And I think that was the most fun that I had, because I got to take them somewhere, show them something new.
Yeah.
They got to see Lake Erie and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. You know, and that's something that Pat, Mandy, and Ruby Jacobs had facilitated, you know, because we couldn't do that on our own. And then we had a lady that went to Brantford General and Paris. Another lady went to West Haldeman Hospital, Simcoe Hospital. So we made the whole gamut. And I think that to this day there still are different navigators, they call them now, that go into the hospitals, and that's because
what you started.
Well, not what I started, but what I was a part of.
Okay.
And I think that people really benefit from that service.
Yeah. Well,
Can I just say something?
go ahead.
I want to say Marilyn is being very humble.
I know she is. I know
And
she is.
went well above and beyond what the role would have been. So the roles were to support people in hospital. Marilyn supported the people, their relatives, the community.
It's a whole package.
And with food, whatever. So she was amazing, and it's out of her heart and her passion that she supported so many Native people, as we said at the programs, going above and beyond.
I was just actually going to comment on that, because workers make the difference, okay? You can get other workers in there and they don't care, you know, and that's the service you're going to get. And in the medical, people don't realize as well, like a lot of Indians or indigenous, what do we want to call ourselves?
Well,
Well,
all Indians.
but they're scared. I had an experience with my own mother when I took her to McMaster. She was terrified, absolutely terrified. She wouldn't even speak. I'm really glad, like, over the many years, on the successes both of you ladies have achieved, because that is different now. There's more being educated out there as to our people, and the fear, because there is a legitimate fear too when an Indian person goes into the hospital. Are they coming out? Especially due to history, you know, women got sterilized, or, you know, things happen to you in the hospital, right? Like, we couldn't trust it. So for you to work in that field, I commend you, and and I know you. And like you said, Marilyn's being very humble about her achievements too, right? But I'm going to go back to you.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Because you have really led that path, and like I said, I was only little. I was just being born there, where you were already on the lead to doing great things. So continue with your story. Like what else? Your involvement.
I think I'll start. I'll try and do a little bit chronologically.
Okay.
So I would say, I'm thinking back in 1992. I had met at a conference, Dr. Vince Tukane, and we had a lot of our discussion was about the lack of health professionals that were available and how difficult it was to get admitted to the Faculty of Health Sciences. Now, we then asked for a meeting with the executive of the Faculty of Health Sciences. So Vince and I met with them, expressed our concerns about recruitment and looking at were there some differences in inviting Native people into the program, or did they have trouble access? And yes, there were. I had been in a group in Thunder Bay, and they had a special program for Indigenous folks coming down from the north who had never been in a taxi or on a bus or whatever.
my goodness.
So they had a prep program to help them because the environment's so different.
Yes.
So we talked about, that there are opportunities. How do we recruit and how do we help people understand that it's different living on the reserve than living in the city? And so that resulted in actually a task group, they called it, that looked at how to invite more Indigenous people to apply to McMaster and how we could help them stay in and so on. I just reread that report, and it wouldn't fly in today's. So this was 1992. Some of the work, I would say, was done by a colonial group, although there were a couple of Native people on the committee. But it did talk about having more supports, more mentors, and so on. So it was at least a first step for the Faculty of Health Science at McMaster to know. So I ended up as being on faculty at Mac. This was a few years later, but that then allowed me the opportunity to provide education to non-Indigenous people about some of the challenges and the health challenges and so on. And so that kind of started me with other people asking me then to speak. So I did get involved in faculty and education, as well as then we can talk about later maybe some other opportunities that came up. But I first got drawn into the Indigenous community at large, more formally, when it was actually Connie Bellamy, is that her? Yeah, called me and said, "Oh, I saw your picture in the paper on something, and why don't you apply to be on the board of Urban Native Homes?"
Oh, okay.
So I was on the board of Urban Native Homes. That was my first entry into the more formal community.
Okay.
I mean, I knew half the people, but it was the first time that I thought, this is a place where I can give back some of the things that I have learned working in mainstream.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I always heard your name. I always heard your name.
To think how far back that was, 1994. I went on the board of Urban Native Homes.
Oh. Well, it was funny yesterday. I had members. There were 3, and then I looked and I thought, oh my God, we all have a connection to NEPA. Yeah. And then later on, when I was at the room, I was like, we also all had a connection to the Indian Center. We all had I started thinking, it's funny how you start with one, but eventually you do have a connection to everybody, right? So, Marilyn, now that Pat's giving me a little time to talk, what else? Where to continue your journey from where you were? What led you more to the health center, or were there other things involved there? What else were you doing?
I was going to school part-time and taking different classes and things like that. And when I went to work at the health center, my job was supposed to be management trainee. I was the executive director at the time. I was supposed to work under him, and he was supposed to teach me what he knew so that when he decided that he was going to retire or whatever, I was
Trained.
Yeah, I was trained that if I so choose, then I could apply to take over the job.
Okay.
So going to school and being involved in Native education, you know, it propped me up a bit.
Yes.
You know, because now if I was in conversation with one of my relatives, I could compete with them, you know.
Yeah.
I knew what I was talking about, and I just loved it. And to this day, you know, I'm proud that I'm Native. I get involved if I can with anything going on that's Native, if I think that I can lend a hand or, you know, do something to make whatever's happening succeed. These are my people. I love them. This is my blood.
Yes.
You know, and if anything, I'm put on this earth to do what I can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not in it for glory. I'm not in it for prestige. I'm in it because
You care.
I'm here and that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and then also my association with Pat Mandy, and some of the initiatives that she did. Great people on the board, and one of the things that the community as a whole did, and Pat is associated with the Hamilton Police Services. Each board at the time had one police officer that was a member of their board.
Mm-hmm.
I was a part of Urbanated Homes Board of Directors, and we had two.
You guys were the only ones, I think,
Actually, there
ever.
was 3 at one time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There was, if I can't remember, Deborah, a female
Oh, yeah.
motorcycle.
Yep.
Motorcycle.
But, you know, and it was working with the non-native institutions. We developed, you know, great rapport, and that led on to, I had a break from the health center, and then I went back. But before my break, they had a project that the health center was partnering with the Hamilton Police Services, and that was to develop victim services, Aboriginal victim services person who would, if something happened and victim services needed to go and make a call, as support person for a death or whatever that happened to the community, this Aboriginal person would go to the ones where it was a Native person that needed the support. So I'm honored to say that I got to do that pilot project for a year and a half. I got to see the inner workings of the police department. I got to see what the community can do in times of sadness or violence or stuff like that, and it was really one of the nicest experiences that I've had. Our project was called Makwa, which means bear.
Oh, okay.
And that title was was offered through Walter Cook, our traditional person at the health center. He named the program for me, and it was just, I think that both sides got something out of the project. It's really too bad that at the time we were only had the project for as long as money lasts.
That's the common thread
Yeah.
through everything, right?
But later on, Six Nations developed their own victim services program. So they have a victim services program out in Six Nations, and I think they're affiliated with the Brantford Victim Services.
Okay.
So
Okay.
But
That's good. My goodness. That's the early years, too.
yeah,
That's the early years we haven't even heard about later on.
yes. So it was a good experience. I had never seen a dead body before, but I got to see my share of them and got to interact with the family or whoever it was that needed the support.
Right.
And they were very grateful. You know, you don't realize how you need to have a helping hand or a friendly face or even a hug when someone's in a moment of trauma and, you know, high emotions. So it was, and
Very
Victim
successful.
Services is still running in Hamilton. I think we have, or there is 2 or 3 Native people on it still.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Marilyn. So just going back to Pat again, you want to give us a little bit more about your journey? Because from apparently you have, I briefly looked at your resume and I see Master of Public Administration, Certified Healthcare Executive, Bachelor of Arts, Sociology BA, Registered Nurse Diploma Program. And that's just some things on your big list here. It's like, wow. Let's talk.
Did she mention that she was the Vice President of Patient Services at Hamilton Health Science
Wow, that's a big
Corporation?
job.
And because of her, we got to use her knowledge and her ins to different things, so.
Okay, you're going to have to share on that.
Well, I wasn't going to really talk all about the education piece, but I will just briefly just say that I've been so fortunate that I've had the opportunities open, but also taken the risks to say, I'll do that, because there's been so many times in my career where people have said, gee, you're doing okay here, why don't you try this? And I think, well, what do I know? And then I figure, well, they've asked me, so all they can do is fire me after, you know, like, and I could get another job. So I take the risk. And then when you take the risk, and this is one of my teachings to a lot of the people that I've mentored over years, is take the risk because it will help. And usually it was somewhere, because if you look at the education, it was usually in a non-Indigenous environment. But it then gave me a place at the table. And I think that the other piece is having the place at the table is good. Even if you don't speak up in the beginning while you're watching and learning, because you know that we don't get,
Yes.
except me sometimes. But anyway, that they have to acknowledge you.
Yes.
You're at the table, and there's so
Yes.
many times when they say, oh, well, we better think of the Indigenous perspective on this.
I've had that experience.
Yeah,
I know
so
totally what you're
they
speaking
may
about.
not even have thought about it. But anyway, so I did have opportunity. After my my nursing, I worked at the hospital. I had gone up the ladder somewhat, and one of my superiors said, "You know what? You're doing really well. You should take this distance learning education so you can have some credentials to be a manager." So I took it. And then they said, you did really well. Why don't you take some courses at McMaster? So I did, and then that's how I got my bachelor's. I actually was in a campaign to try and have laddering. So you went from, if you were a graduate diploma, you could just take some courses and get your BSCN. Well, it took us several years and lobbying. They said, take a few courses and then there'll be your electives when we have that program. Well, it never happened in my time. It sort of fell apart. However, it later on did happen.
Yes.
But by the time I finished my BA, I thought, okay, well, I'll carry on. Then when I was this is really bad when I say, a friend of mine came in and he said, you know, there's a really good course at Queen's that's a master's in public administration that you could go to, and it's part-time and it's for people who are working, and he said he'd applied to it. So, and he reported to me. So I thought, well, that's really good. I could do that. You do it on weekends and so on. So I applied, and I got in, and he didn't.
Whoa, he told you about
And
it.
he told me about it. So that was the only little bit that I felt bad about, but probably because I was in a more senior position than he, and so on. So that's how I got into the Masters. And one of the opportunities there was from the people who were in it were people who were in senior positions, either at the municipal, provincial, or federal level. So they were all, and that you were working, and you were able to pick your policy courses. So I did a lot. There was Indigenous policy, there was whatever. So in your papers, I was able to write whatever I wanted in the papers. So I got a lot of learning there from professors. That hooked me into, I actually went and gave to some focus groups at Six Nations around. It was just the time when they're looking at transfer of health to the reserves.
Yes.
So I was so fortunate that I got that program that I could do while I was still having fairly young children, and I could do it in a way that I could build on both my work and my interest in culture and Indigenous history and so on. So that was really great, and I've tried everything that I've done to try and build in something about Indigenous culture and pieces that I could probably learned more than anything, but that could share and could get to meet different people that I could then connect. Right. So a lot of these things, I think, was the Creator setting me on a path and giving me the opportunities to say, take these that would help build on how I could help
And I
in
love
the
the way
future.
all these people came to you and say, you should take this course.
Yes.
Then
Yep.
later on, you should take this course.
Yeah.
And you just went along your path.
That's right.
That was chosen.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
okay, okay,
Yep.
okay. Just like
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
You were selected, okay, okay,
Yep.
okay. So it's
Now,
funny.
there were some, and my determining, would this help the Indigenous way? Because I did have other groups. Would you be on this? Would you? Well, no, it's not where I am.
Yeah.
It's not how I can help our community.
Yes.
So that was it.
Wow, you really are you work amongst the people
And
Or
and
amongst
however
people.
I can help.
and bringing
Yeah.
people together. So, oh wow.
And she has mentored doctors and nurses.
Oh wow.
Dr. Amy
Yeah.
Montour.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
she
another
was
name I've heard. I
her
heard that name in the
mentor.
community.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my God, you like I don't. You're like
been
grandma.
around.
You're grandma
Yeah,
of
grandma.
the health field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? You helped to lead that road. You helped
Yep.
to pave that way.
That's
so
my-
make it
She
easier.
earned every white hair
On
she
her head.
has.
On her head.
See, I'm not as far advanced as she, because mine is
Well,
great.
neither
You're
is
not
mine.
as you're not as old.
Yeah, I'll be 72 this year, so
You're coming up there,
yeah.
young one.
I'm a baby then.
Yeah,
I'll be 59.
they're the baby.
I'm
Yeah.
59.
They're the baby.
I'm the baby. I'm the three.
Yes.
But again, I had great women to see in front, right? Like I said, I didn't know you, but I always heard your name,
Yeah.
right, in the health field. Marilyn, I got to meet Marilyn very, early on. God, I've known you for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've known you for a while. And through Bond, I think, probably.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
where our work
For the
came.
powwows.
Powwows and doing all the Bond.
Yeah.
Again, very connected to, the cultural
Yeah.
stuff. There for the people. I could always rely on you for bingo.
Yeah.
And bringing food.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, to feed our people.
Yeah.
And every year, you always showed up.
And bringing food only got me
always-
into trouble once.
Oh yeah.
How'd you get in trouble
When I,
bringing food?
when I worked at the health center, I
Because she was
used
going
to have,
over and above her job.
Okay.
when I worked
Because of
at
her
the
heart.
health center, we used to always have a community dinner for Thanksgiving and Christmas
Yes,
and
yes,
different
yes.
activities. Well, before the COVID, one of the last community dinners that we did was at Thanksgiving, and I had over 100 people there at the health center.
At the health center, where'd you put
At
them?
the health center, we just put them where
Everywhere?
everywhere.
Oh my God.
And
But that's something you would do.
Yes.
Yeah.
With no help. To
Of
get
course,
all,
she's
where
running
she
the
was
whole
in
show.
there and bringing all the food up, carting it all, doing the whole
That's
thing.
what I mean. I used to
That's
look
where
out the
she got in
window.
trouble for safety reasons for her.
Yeah. Because I remember many times looking out that window, and there's Marilyn, back
Yep.
of the van, pulling all this food up. I'd run out
Yep.
there, come on,
Yep.
Marilyn, I'll help you,
Yep.
right?
But it was so rewarding because we had people that would come, and if they never had family or circumstances were such that they might not even get a meal.
Yeah.
They came, they had a meal. We always made sure we had extra so
Yeah.
that they could bring stuff home. And
Oh,
to
yeah.
me, that was what my role was.
I
And
hear
it
you,
made
yeah.
me feel like I contributed to, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I only got in trouble once for
I
having
can see why, though.
too many. Well, I don't think
100
it was.
people at the health center. I can't even think of where
Including
you put
five,
them.
including 5 people in wheelchairs
Yes.
who we had. These big heavy men were there,
You
and
see,
they
this
carried
is-
the wheelchairs with
Up those
people
stairs?
up the stairs because the lift wasn't working.
Wow.
So-
I'm still 100 people.
Yeah.
100 people. Like, I can think of the program room upstairs. Like, that's the
Yeah.
only big room there is the program room upstairs.
But we would rearrange furniture in the boardroom and
You just put it
and
everywhere.
stuff. Yeah,
That's
it
amazing. That's amazing. But I'm not surprised because knowing you, yeah.
It was fun.
It was
fun. Even the cleanup and doing the dishes.
Yeah. But you
Cooking.
probably had crews
Yeah.
that helped you too.
5
Once the-
turkeys we would cook.
Yeah.
You know, and have homemade potatoes.
You know what the crazy thing is? People don't realize this is health.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
It
is
It's all
health.
health.
It's all health, right? Because just the fact, and because I had the pleasure working in the homeless field there at the health center, and I was the outreach worker, but I was like you. And how I started that program, in a sense, was through food.
Yeah.
Breakfast,
Yeah.
a breakfast program. And we started off, we had maybe 10 people come in the beginning, but in the end, I was like Marilyn,
Yeah.
I was like, I had 30, 40 people in this room, and it's like, and I got them all sitting we started at one table, then I had to get more tables, right? And put tables, it looked like a little cafe after a while. But one of the things that I for myself was, I got those guys to come in, and eventually they learned, we all sat down, right? So there was no uppers, nobody's upper. I even told our outreach workers, I says, you need to come in and sit down and have food with them, right? And I would start off my day, I do a smudge, I do the prayer, I do all that stuff. But I also cooked the meal.
yeah.
I was out there, I'd be sweating everything, I cook in the meal, I bring it out, I lay it out, and I laid it out in buffet fashion. And then the guys would go through a line. I usually would go back to the room, and I'd be exhausted, you know. But what happened one day, one of the guys came back, he says, you know, people, by the time it gets to the end, all the food's gone. So I said, okay, and I realized now I have to do something more. So the next step was going out there, and as part of the prayer, and I would say to the guys, okay, eyes are big, no, bellies are hungry, eyes are big. I know that you see all this food. I says, but think of it this way. Today, you're the first one in line. You have full access. I says, but what do you do if you're the last one in line and there's nothing left? Think of that. I want you all to think of that. I says, because one day you will be the last one in the line. I said, so make sure there's enough food for the person behind you. Look at the room when you come into it so you can see how many people need to be fed, right? Not just pile all your food on your plate. I says, this is the way it's done, right? And I did that a few times. And again, so after that, I learned, they would say, Yvonne does prayer first. Nobody touches that food until Yvonne does prayer first. So they got to learn that, and I didn't have to say it.
Yeah.
The people, the men amongst themselves said that. And then the next one, so if somebody looked like taking too much food, they would be like, hey, the line. It's all okay, you know, and off they go. But to me, they were common sense. They were things we were brought up with. And to me, again, and the respect of how I worked with them. I respected them, right? I don't know what path that led them to where they are now, but that respect. And when you show someone respect, you get respect. Yeah. So I found that was my medicine way of dealing with everybody, right? Yeah. And trying to, so yeah, there was a very cohesive piece there, all based on just natural things of feeding people. I also had a little mini food bank and clothing bank. I was clothing people. I sound like a little Marilyn there. I'm trying to do all these things. I remember one of the things too, having dinners, because I thought that was important too. Yeah. Christmas was coming up. I don't want to do a dinner at Christmas at December 1st for a dinner. That's not right. So I remember my staff would say to me, Yvonne, because Wendy, usually it was just me and Wendy because she would be the one to stand by me. We'd be doing their dinner, 2 days before the holiday.
Yeah.
Just because our last day, and Wendy was like, and then I'd be exhausted, and she'd say, you did this again to yourself, right? But it's because we care. It's because we care. We made a difference. And like some of these guys, I don't know when there was last time they were hugged. So I was a big hugger too. I'm a hugger. And so I'd go up and I'd hug people, right? Just to show them I cared. And to me, that's what made the success of that program, right? And unfortunately, I wasn't there for all of it, but during my time there, I knew I did everything I could, right, to give to the guys because I seen it. It's holistic. You got to heal somebody. You got to look at all aspects, right? If one aspect is down, it does affect everything else. And, so that, to me, that's my contribution to the health and the well-being of our community. So I'm going to go back to you, Pat. Your great history. Where are we next?
Well, you know what I'd like to talk a little bit about? I started with Urban Native Homes.
Urban Native
So
Homes,
I'd like to talk about some of my experiences there. So I was there on the board when Canada was first developed. I was not a big part of that except just as a board member, so I won't go into that. But what became more exciting is that we knew that there were gaps in service and they were mainly for seniors. And so we looked at, and I was working at the hospital at this time, so I knew in the healthcare system that there were going to be 8,000 new long-term care beds in the province.
Yes.
I think it was 8,000. Anyway, so we said, well, why don't we look at that? We need a place for our elders. So we actually went, Janice, Lewis, and Walter Cook and I, we met with the people from Queen's Park. We had several meetings. It was very interesting because they weren't used to, at that time, having smudges and openings, but Walter would always do that. He was so wonderful to take along and understand that people didn't know, but he's going to teach them. Anyway, we basically, and we had land from the Niagara Area Peninsula Board. Anyway,
NEPAM. Okay.
And we had some land that we could have, and then the province said, we're not going to put it in writing, but if you can get the capital, we can find you beds. But we would like you to work with extended care because we know you don't have people in your community that have all of the skills and expertise and knowledge to operate the standards of a long-term care facility, because that's what we would have to do with these beds. So we had been working with Brian Porter from Two Row Architects to look at what the building might look like. We knew that we had to have a minimum of 96 beds. We were going to put in employment offers for Native people in Hamilton. And anyway, so we got an appointment at the federal level to get funding, capital, and we went, Janice and Brian and I went to Ottawa to meet with these folks. Well, that day there was something going on in Parliament that everybody was tied to the house. We were then said, go to across the road. It was a bar. We only had pop. It was a bar across the road and wait, and the people from the federal level would come and meet with us. Well, they never came. We came home. We never got the capital, so we never got the beds. However, I truly believe that was the Creator looking after us, because we look after our elders who are not well. We don't put them in long-term care. And I know that there was later a pilot that really didn't work out for long-term care. So then we looked at, so what other things do our elders need? And it was homelessness.
Yes.
We had homeless, Aboriginal, and we looked at, so I must be ancient because we said 55 and over would be our elderly, just because of the lifestyle, the lives that they lived have been one. And so we worked. We got to on Mary Street. Again, Walter was a part of all of our thing. We got money from National Homelessness Initiative, and we were able to go ahead and work with, and again, Walter Cook named Kugado and Manitou, Sheltering the Spirit, and I think we started with 23 beds. And so we were having trouble in the beginning in filling them because people didn't want to leave their friends on the street.
Yes.
So we actually had, because
yes.
it's community, that was their families.
Yes.
So what we started to do was to have some socials and some more programming at the center so that people could invite their friends there and so on. So,
Okay.
and it's still going today, and I think it's a wonderful
Well, just a comment. I
project.
just want to respond to that.
Yeah.
My youngest sister, Valerie Maracle, looks after those guys
All
over
right.
at Kugadawin,
Yeah.
and that's her job. And there's 25. She has 25 units. And yeah, so I was working with them for a bit there, and but yeah, she works with them full time right now.
So we also had on our committee that I chaired, looking at the seniors, people from Desney.
Yes.
And I had originally, because people knew me, been on the hiring committee for the first executive director, but I wasn't on the board until a couple of years later. Okay. So I was on both Urban Native Homes and Desney
at the same time?
while we were going through these projects.
Wow.
So I think
probably
it all worked
helped.
out, and it
Yeah.
worked out, and I had a lot of connections mainstream and that I could pull over.
Yeah.
So it was good. So that was my story of Urban Native Homes.
Wow, wow. That was our first major capital project in the community, which, you know, we needed at the time, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to go back to Marilyn.
Yeah.
Your story, the paper in front of you. You want to talk more about that?
One of the tasks that I did when I was in the Victim Services Department at Hamilton Police Services, we had to do lunch and learns.
Okay.
So I did different lunch and learns, and I developed like a resource book.
Okay.
And in there, the first part of it was I did about Native traditions and history and stuff like that. I got a lot of information from Bev Hill out at Six Nations. She was very prominent at that time. She would come in and do stuff in the city and stuff that non-Native people might be interested in learning, and stuff to make sure that the relationship that they developed was, one of mutual respect in that. And one of the other things that I did was I developed a little blurb about, because people every once in a while would talk about missing and murdered Aboriginal women, and it wasn't as well versed or well advertised as it has become.
Okay.
So I did one, and at that time the closest one, or the most recent one, was Tashina General. She was the young 21-year-old woman who was pregnant and was murdered by her boyfriend at the time. And that was a very devastating situation on the reserve. And Norma General, a prominent person in the Aboriginal community, that was her granddaughter.
Oh.
And so I developed a little package. I think there was, forget exactly how many people that I cataloged. 57 incidents I cataloged, and these were missing, these were murdered.
What's your time period for those 50?
It varies. I have some from 1978, where this young girl was murdered, 8 years old, was murdered by her stepfather, to 2008 with the Tashina General incident. So I included this in so that people at their own leisure could take a look at the things, and it wasn't always about someone being missing or murdered. It could have been someone was missing and then the police found her, and the treatment of some of these women when they were found. You know, they were treated like they were street garbage, some of them, you know, and
Yes.
because they maybe could have been drunk or
Yes.
on drugs or something, so they weren't, the respect wasn't there for them even taking into consideration their circumstances at the time. So I did that, and I include a section in this binder of resources that were available in the city and surrounding areas, and like a brochure, or there's this service and this is what they do, and a contact number or stuff like that. And when my time was finished with the police services, I brought that binder, and it was a big binder. I brought it back to the health center, and then I gave it to the advocate at the time, and you know, for them to use as a reference, a reference thing. So it was a lot of work.
That must have been very emotional.
It was.
Oh
It
my God,
was.
just with what the two you said, it
Yeah.
got me. So for you
Yeah.
to have to go into
Yeah.
those details and type it and all that, it's like, that must have been really heavy on you during that
But
time.
when I was doing it, the site that I went on had a lot of these people on it, and there was pictures of them.
Oh.
And to see the picture, read what happened to them, and that it was, it was very emotionally draining.
Yeah.
But there was this drive in you to say, well, you know, is there something that I could do? And I guess something that I could do was
To acknowledge them.
I put them in a package so that people can read about them, and maybe they would get, you know, enthusiastic about helping the missing and murdered women. So I think there was a couple men in here too that were missing and murdered, but it was mostly women and children at different ages, you know, and some people for years and years had been missing, and whatever happened to them. And probably if you were to follow up on these people, you know, they still don't know what happened to them. And that's on my bucket list is and someday, before my time on this earth is finished, I'm going to go out and visit the Highway of Tears out in Alberta.
Yeah.
I just want to walk on that road for a mile and feel the spirits of the women that
Went missing there.
went missing there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
And
heavy duty.
along the same line, one time we talked about our elder Walter Cook. He had a daughter that, Walter is passed away right now, but he has a daughter who was in theater at the time. And he took us, some of the staff from the health center, to I was going to say, if it was down in New York and Broadway, this would have been like an off-Broadway production about the barber who was murdering all these Native women out on the West Coast.
Okay.
I forget what it was called, but it was such, the title of this, it was like the police didn't care about them. You know, these were just incidental and people who just so happened to be killed by a barber, and, you know, like no big deal. That movie or that film, or not even a film,
Theater.
that play,
Okay.
just impacted all of us who went to see it.
Yeah.
It chronicled, it was the spirits of all these women who were murdered on their path to their next life or their next level. And it was all in black. The whole set was in black, and you would just see the spotlight would come out, and there would be a lady there. The very first scene of the plate is all these women walking a path, and they're all naked.
Oh.
You know, and that just showed that they're stripped down of all their life, their dignity, you know, their emotions, and it was one of the best plays that I've ever seen. It was one of the ones that had the most impact on me.
Wow.
And it probably fueled my interest in the missing and murdered
Trying
women.
to do something.
Yeah.
Bring it to
So
life.
hopefully, if the Creator allows me, I'll get to walk that mile on the highway of tears. And so,
Wow, that's heavy.
yes, it
That's
is
heavy.
heavy, but it's interesting because if people don't take an interest, you know, it's going to keep happening.
Yes, you're right.
You know, we still to this day, and this was more than 10 years ago that I
Started this.
started this.
So when you said you handed it over to somebody, was that their job to continue it? Is it so? As the last 10 years recorded, or just these 10 years?
These 10 years, as far
So
as I know.
so that could be big, a lot bigger now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It seems to me when I reflect, because I'm old now. I'm almost a has-been, but all these activities and events have meant something to me. You know, I've been impacted by,
Yes.
you know, the things that I've read or the things that I've learned, even with my food, my need to feed people.
Yeah.
Another one of my desires was to have a kids' food program during the summer months when, you know, they don't have a reliable source of
yes.
food security. Some of them don't, you know. And
It's funny, I thought of the same thing when I was
Yeah.
working at the Indian Center on King,
yeah,
when it was
yeah,
on Main
I
Street
did
there.
too.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
sometimes
have
yeah.
that food for kids
Yep.
program. I thought, you know,
We should be doing something like
yes,
this.
yes, we should be.
We are the same. Food,
Yeah.
gotta feed the people.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
because if their bellies are full, then their minds are.
I can relate
Or
to that.
content.
I remember many times being at school and my stomach is just
Yeah.
a growling.
Yeah.
Right? And there was times where if you didn't eat, we didn't go to school.
Yeah.
And we waited for Dad to get home with his pay that day. So we would hurry up and buy some cereal, we all eat, and then we go to school. So,
I still have a love of mustard and onion sandwiches.
oh, you must not get no colds.
No.
Nobody's
so,
going to
but-
come near you either.
Yeah. You know, but when you think there's so many things that we could do and continue to do in our community. You know, one of the great achievements or accomplishments in the city is the Aboriginal Health Center.
Yes.
You know, it brought together people who needed to have health care, medical care, mental health issues, and different programs. You know, what would we do if something happened and the health center had to close down? During my time as the executive director, the big deal was when the health center first opened up, it was funded by the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy for maybe, I don't know, 9 or 10 years. But because it was a provincial program, you know, trying to get more money, which they needed to do either more problems or programs and to have better services or enhance the needs, you know, money wasn't available then. So there was 10 health centers in Ontario, and they started talking about, well, maybe we need to go to the Association of Community Health Centers. And these are non-Indigenous health centers, like Main Street.
Okay, okay.
One example is the North Hamilton.
North End Community Center.
Yeah, it's not called that now.
Compass.
Yeah,
Compass?
Compass
Okay.
now. You know, so to join the organization that they were with. So that's what the 10 health centers eventually decided, that they were going to leave Oz, Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy, and go with the Association of Community Health Centers, I think it's, because they thought that they would be able to get more money, I think. I don't know how that turned out, whether they do get more money, you know, but.
It always comes to funding, eh?
I do.
Oh, you know, you got the answer to that, do you?
Well, I don't have the answer, but I do know that there is a lot more funding, and so it's funded through the province. And when I was at the Lynn, we sponsored some programs,
Yeah.
Indigenous programs that
Cougatowan.
expanded.
Yeah.
Well, Cougatowan, but also for the health center.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I wrote a proposal to the Lynn one time on getting vehicles.
Okay.
You got one.
We got one, but I wrote that proposal, and
get
it's
that.
still some people still aren't happy that they figure that they don't have a vehicle to use, but you know, at least at one time they did.
Yeah. So when I went to the Lynn, I'd been on the board, not when it started, but I'd been on the board. And when I went to the Lynn, because of a conflict of interest, I had to resign from the board.
Okay, I get you.
Because we funded,
funding
and
the
so we did
agency,
flow
yeah.
funding
Yeah.
through to Dewada Desne. And then after I retired from the Lynn, about a year or so later, I went back on the board and was on it until just last year.
Okay. So just to let you know, we're coming down to the end.
Yep.
Okay. So I want you to think about, I know, believe me, again, I know this is just touching the top of these topics, and we really need to do people individually, okay? To really, you come with both so much information, and so at some point somebody's be in touch with you to follow up. But what would you like in this session of the Tea Talks? What would you like to leave as your legacy? What story or what do you want to share with the people? So when they watch this is what you want to say to them. So, want to start? Who wants to start?
My elder here.
Our elder here.
Okay, so first I'm just going to say there's one little piece, it's a long piece, so I can't do it now, is the whole legacy of Garnett Silversmith and the follow-up
Yes,
of the
that is an
inquest,
important
which really
piece.
led into a lot of the work that Marilyn has done.
Okay.
So at some point, I think it's really important that story be told.
Okay.
However, if I think of what I hope my legacy is and what my proudest thing, all of the amazing people that I have worked with and mentored. So people like Amy Montour. I tried to work with I told the School of Nursing, any Indigenous students come in, I'd be happy to work with them. Brad Johnson is another one. So I'm so proud of so many people that are doing well.
Yes.
Because I've been able to, and it's not just me, it's just they need somebody to feel a little bit secure,
Help to guide them,
give them,
support them.
a little bit of advice. I don't tell them what to do. I help them work through what they need to do, but I encourage, take the risk. You know, it'll work out. If it doesn't, there's a reason it doesn't. And just follow your heart and your head. Get yourself at a table. You'll learn to speak, but just get yourself at the table so they have to consider what you say. So I am so proud of so many great leaders that I have worked with in the Indigenous community that are doing well and will carry on for years to come. And I hope they're influencing. So it is that seventh generation that one can influence.
Good, thank you. Somebody who definitely will be following up with you. Because again, it's, and like I said, we're just very, very basic here. like there's so much wealth of information that's going to be recorded, and again, this is just touching the top, and we'll be in touch. So Marilyn, I know you kind of touched a little bit upon what you want, your road, your path you want to walk down, but in the community, what would you like to leave as your legacy? What would you like to tell your people that you've been working with for?
That I like helping. Recently, someone asked me if I thought that I was an elder. I said, no, I'm not an elder. I don't have the teachings, I don't have the knowledge. However, I'm a great helper. I would be a great elder helper.
A great elder helper.
Yeah.
That's a new concept. The great elder helper.
Yeah. I think that would be something that I would enjoy. But I must tell you what my one biggest regret is of my life. From the time I was really small, I always wanted to be one of two things. I either wanted to be the mayor of Hamilton, or I wanted to be a nurse. I couldn't be a nurse because someone throwing up.
Oh, you can't handle that?
Makes me really nauseous.
Okay.
So I had to strike that off my table. And the mayor, I thought, well, I don't really know if I want to. The changes that I would want to see made, may not be, looked in favor to some people. Mm-hmm. And that follows into my about to be finished role as the the Indigenous Advisory Committee, which I've chaired for probably almost 10 years.
Yes.
And the relationship that we've had working with the city departments and some of the councillors and the mayor too.
Yes.
I just think that I'm better helping. I feel better standing in the shadows or off to the side, but helping to the best of my ability, doing whatever
you're behind
someone needs to have done.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you ladies for coming out and sharing your stories and information with us. And again, someone's going to be following up because for Pat, you are a wealth of information. You have a lot of information, and you didn't even cover. You didn't even. We just.
It's because I've had a lot of years.
Yes, you do. But you also made a difference.
It's been an honor.
You made a
to
difference.
be a part of this.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. I think it's
you.
a wonderful project.
I do too, because in the sense, and I go back to, I think with my years of NEPA, again, looking at all that, because I looked at North America, all those images, and I just see the importance. We need to write our own history, right? We need to bring forward our history, right? And educate the non-Indigenous people as to our path and what we went through. And but I would like to see it by the people who did things, before they're gone too.
Yes.
Because we're seeing of a lot of our people, passing away, right? And try and do this before, and get their words, so people when they view this, they will feel from that person. Did you want to say something else? Yeah, I see you grabbing papers and stuff.
No, I just I want to make sure that I make this in some sense of reasonable order for you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay then. Well then, otherwise, we are going to complete our session here. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I know, you're twice. You've been double, so that's good. It's just, again, all that information.
You can have that or share it with your family.
So, with that in mind, I would like to just call it the session to a close. And again, thanking these very beautiful, lovely women that have come forward to share their knowledge with us. And hope to see more stuff coming. And thank you very much.